Thank you. And you might want to pull the microphone a little closer to you. That's good, right about there. Thank you.
Okay.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hello, my name is Overby, and I'm a licensed practical nurse.
How long have you been a nurse?
30 years now.
Can you briefly tell the jury the training experience you have to be a nurse?
I have the training experience to work in nursing homes, hospitals, private duty, doing trace, G-tubes, ventilators, suctioning, urinary catheters, G-tubes, G-buttons, GJ tubes, suction machines, everything, whatever you name, just about I can do it.
And do you still work as a nurse?
Yes, I do. Still in private duty.
And what is private duty?
Private duty is me individually taking care of a one person, one-on-one person in their home.
Okay. Oftentimes, I've been referring to that as at-home nurses. Is that accurate? Same thing?
Yeah, it's at-home nursing, yes.
Okay. Do you have any training or experience? I know you mentioned it a moment ago, but with regard specifically to G-tubes and G-buttons?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Were you employed as a nurse back in 2002?
Yes, I was.
And at any point during that time, did you begin working in the Ferguson household?
Yes, I did.
And who was the patient that you were taking care of?
Christian Ferguson.
All right. How old was Christian Ferguson approximately at that time?
6'7".
Okay.
He's very young.
And do you know if Christian suffered from any particular illnesses or diseases that required the at-home nurses?
Yes, he had a G-tube, and he also had a specific diagnosis of only having 10 grams of protein a day.
Okay. So when you would provide him food, would you just have to be mindful of how many grams of protein he'd be able to consume?
Yes. 10 grams of protein a day was possibly one hot dog or a chicken wing. Yes.
And would Christian Ferguson receive any particular nutrition via his G-tube?
Yes, he did. He was on a prescription from his doctor of a milk substance that he had to take through his G-tube to receive the rest of his nutrition so he can stay healthy and alive.
Stay with us here on Court TV Live. We're going to take you back into that courtroom. We'll hit the pause button. You won't miss any of the testimony in this very compelling case for 9-year-old Christian still missing. Stay tuned here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Endlessly better.
Good Monday afternoon. Welcome back to Court TV. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott, always honored to be with you. This is a case that's captivated the nation. The disappearance of Christian Taylor puzzled investigators for almost 2 decades before a break in the case led the police to Dawan Ferguson. He is now charged in the murder of his 9-year-old son. And his trial began with a bang today. The prosecutors laid out the case against the former father. It's a case that has made a deep impact on this Missouri town and is set to reveal new details in this harrowing case, including why it took so long for the police to arrest the defendant. We want to get you right back into the courtroom. You haven't missed any testimony. On the stand right now is one of the nurses who cared for 9-year-old Christian before he disappeared.
Low in protein so that he could consume those other items?
Yes, it was.
Could Christian Ferguson still consume food via his mouth?
Only the 10 grams of protein. And anything else you would like to give him, it would be maybe a snack, a children's snack.
And any of those additional snacks, would that also have to be low protein or no protein, basically?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. Showing the witness was marked as State's Exhibit 101. Ms. Overby, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at a G-tube, similar to the one that Christian had.
Can you explain to the jury kind of what a G-tube is and how it works?
Judge, I would object. I don't believe this witness has been deemed an expert in this.
Your Honor, she indicated that she has training experience specifically in G-tubes and G-buttons in her work as a nurse.
Yes.
I think that she should be able to explain this demonstrative to the jury to help assist them in understanding how it worked and how it applied to Christian Ferguson.
All right, so the objection will be overruled. I don't think she's being presented as a witness, as an expert, but somebody who's more familiar with the process and has had hands-on experience and training. So you may proceed, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. There are two portions. This is the smaller portion of the G-tube, and it actually inserts into the child's stoma, which is an opening in their stomach. And once it is placed, which it has to be done all at the hospital, but once this little section here is placed inside the abdomen, this would be filled with water, and it would go to so many centimeters, and the bulb would actually inflate.
Can everyone see that okay?
And it inflates so it can stay in place so it will not come out. And it can also decrease the same way. And once it's the air or water, mainly it's water that comes out, it can easily come out in and out.
So that balloon fills up
This is the
when
balloon.
it's inserted into the body, which prevents it from falling out or pulling out, things like that, correct?
That is correct.
And then is this little portion here, just this part, the part that's
Okay.
is left on the stomach like that?
And that is true. And this section here actually goes into the little button area. And you just place it in and you just turn it and it's stable. And this is how he received his milk products so he can eat his food.
Now that tube, was that removed and placed back on between every feeding?
Yes,
Okay, so that cord is not hanging from a stomach,
it
correct?
should not be, no.
It's just that little part of the G button?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is it possible for a G button to be removed or fall out?
It should not fall out. I have never had one to fall out, but I have had one that was removed by the child because it's a foreign substance to them, and sometimes they just like to play with them, and they will pull them, and they will pull it out. And if it is pulled out, it needs to go back in immediately because the stoma starts to close. And if it's closed too much, then you have to take the child back to the hospital so they can get it reinserted.
When you were taking care of Christian, did his G button, was it ever out of his body that you know of?
Yes, it was.
And were you able to reinsert it immediately or tell the jury a little bit about that?
No, it was after a weekend. I had came to the house on a Monday and it was out, and I don't know how it had gotten taken out, but I tried to reinsert it. You just need some lubricant and it'll possibly go back into the hole, but into the stomach, but I could not put it back in, so Christian had to go to the hospital, which was Christian Hospital at the time, so he could be reinserted by the doctors.
Who took Christian to the hospital?
I did.
Did Dawan Ferguson go with you?
No, he did not want to go.
You indicated that you noticed that his G button was removed when you came back after a weekend, correct?
That is correct.
Did you work a Monday through Friday, or what was your schedule
I
like?
work Monday through Friday, off on the weekends.
So Saturday and Sunday, Christian was left to be cared for by his father.
Yes.
Okay. And at some point over one of those weekends, this G-tube was removed.
Objection, speculation.
I don't believe it's speculation.
No, I don't believe. I think he's recapping the testimony, so overruled.
Thank you.
Continue with your questions.
So at some point over that weekend, his G button had been removed.
Yes, it was. It was
And-
actually on the floor.
And it had been out for a period of time where it could not reasonably or easily go right back
Be
in.
reinserted. That is correct.
So enough time for that stoma to close. Did I hear you correctly?
That is correct.
Ms. Overby, let's talk a little bit about what you observed in the Ferguson household. Can you describe how Christian would appear to you when you would get there in the mornings?
He would be dirty, smelly, always happy to see me though, but he was always had diapers on him that had been on him for a while, and you can tell because urine used to even be in his shoes.
So the urine would go through his diaper, down his legs, and collect in his
Objection, leading.
shoes?
Hold on a second. I'll sustain that objection.
So you would see Christian, and he would be dirty, as you say.
That is correct, smelling of urine.
What would you do next?
I would take him into their house and give him a bath, put his clothes on, and then I would leave the home
Okay, where would you take Christian?
to my home.
And when you would go back to the house, would Christian be in, would you drop him off in a fresh diaper in a
Yes,
regular
fresh
outfit?
diapers and clean clothing.
So let's say you drop him off at the end of your shift.
Yes.
Would you ever notice anything unusual about when you would find him the next morning?
That sometime he would have them on the same clothing, and they would still be urinated in.
Would you prepare formula for Christian to receive during your shift and after while you were gone?
Yes.
And can you describe to the jury kind of what it took to mix up and make this formula?
Well, he had a certain mixture, which it was on a piece of paper that the way you would have to fix the formula to make it so he would receive his proteins without too much water or even too much of the feeding that he was supposed to receive, the powder he was supposed to receive to be mixed together. And I would have to make that up sometimes. Sometimes it would be some there that was left over, but I would always have to make that.
And would there be times when you would leave a particular amount of that pre-made formula at the residence and it would still be there the next day?
Yes, it would.
Let's talk about Christian's medications. Would you keep an eye on how much were left in the bottles?
Yes, I would.
And would you notice anything unusual about the medication when you would go back the next day?
Yes, it would be at the same amount that let you know that he had not received that medication.
Would this happen over the weekends as well?
Yes, it would.
Did you have to buy Christian food or clothing at any point during your care of him?
I did have to buy Christian food. I did not have to buy clothing because my son was also the same age as Christian. So I would just let him wear my son's clothing.
And why would you let Christian wear your son's clothing?
Objection relevance.
Goes to the state of the household, the overall neglect, Your Honor.
I'll allow it. Overruled.
Because he never had clean clothing, and I would just let him wear my son's clothing because I wouldn't mind just buying extra. And I would just buy extra just for Christian specifically because I didn't mind doing that. I actually treat him like he was my own son, so I wouldn't let him go out like that.
And you talked earlier about having to buy food for Christian. Why would you have to buy food for Christian?
Because I had no assistance in trying to help him being fed from home.
Did you ever find Christian in a double-wrapped diaper?
Yes.
Can you explain what that means to the jury?
That's just 2 diapers instead of 1 to try to, I guess, hold the urine for the night, or if he's a heavy wetter. Normally people like that are just really heavy wetters, they would put 2 diapers on them, but Christian was just a little boy, so he only needed 1 diaper.
And when you would find him in these double-wrapped diapers, would both of them be soaked with urine?
Yes.
Objection leading.
It's not leading, Your Honor.
Hold on.
Yes.
Hold on a second, man. Not everybody can talk at the same time. Objection sustained. The answer will be stricken from the record as well as the question. Jury will disregard the answer in the question. You can restate your question.
How would you find these double-wrapped diapers on Christian?
Just 1 on top of the other.
Would they or would they not have urine in them?
Yes, they would.
Both diapers?
Yes, sir.
And would the urine spread to his clothing as well?
Objection, Judge leading.
That is sustained.
If you know, did it go beyond the diapers?
Yes, it did.
And where would it go beyond the diapers?
Down his legs into his shoes, in his room on the floors.
Would it be in his bedding?
Objection leading.
How is that leading, Your
Hold
Honor?
on a second. It is not leading. It's overruled. You can ask your question. Ma'am, you can answer the question. Did you hear the question?
Please repeat the question.
Would there be urine in his bed as well?
Yes. But sometimes no sheets even on the bed.
Was there a smell at all that you remember with his bedroom?
It smelled of urine, and I'm quite sure the door was always closed because when you open the door, that's when the smell hit you. It was so potent.
And at some point, you were no longer working with the Ferguson household, correct?
That's correct.
An eyewitness compelling testimony that this nurse would leave Christian in his bed, and guess what? The next day, same clothes, double diapers, urine soaked. This is what she said happened at the hands of the father. We have to take a break. We'll go back into court for cross-examination on the other side.
Make your first winning bid today.
Let's get you back into the courtroom in Missouri. This is the case against Dwayne Ferguson. He's alleged with the murder of his 9-year-old son. On the stand is the second witness for the prosecution. This is the nurse who took care of his son during the day.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Day, you've been licensed as an LPN since 1994, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And disabled children is your specialty?
That is correct.
And you're also a mandated reporter,
That is correct.
which means if you suspect abuse or neglect, you're legally required to report it.
That is correct.
Christian was the first child you worked with who had the rare genetic disorder of citrullemia, correct?
Correct.
And you had to read about that condition before you started working with him?
Correct.
And you helped him with feedings and medications?
Yes.
And Christian was an active and energetic child, is that correct?
No.
No. So your testimony here today is that he was not an active and energetic child?
Christian could take a couple of steps, and then Christian would sit down. He could not stand or move for long periods of time because he was tired.
Do you remember back in February of 2004 speaking with Special Agent Liza Ludovico from the FBI?
Yes.
Okay. And with looking at the report, refresh your recollection of your interview with her?
I don't have to.
So your testimony is that you did not tell Liza Ludovico that Christian was an active, energetic child?
What she meant, what I thought she was talking about.
Hold on a second. Hey, hold on a second, all right?
Yeah.
First of all, she didn't testify anything as to what she said to the agent. She answered your question. So you might want to establish with her that she said something to the agent and question her about that then, if she agrees she said it, okay?
Okay. So in the report, when your interview with Liza Ludovico, you had told her that Christian was an active, energetic child.
Energetic, going out to place him on a scooter and push him and have him to hold toys in his hands.
So your testimony is you explained that energetic to you meant being on a scooter and doing
Yes,
all of
with
that?
me assisting him.
And you told that to Liza Ludovico?
Yes, he couldn't ride the scooter alone.
I'm saying you told that to Liza Ludovico. That's your testimony here today.
It should have been, yes.
And Christian had pica, where he would put non-food in his mouth, correct?
Correct.
And as you had testified, you have seen G buttons come out before.
Yes.
And it's common, if careless, clients can pull it out like babies. If they see something dangling, they pull it.
Common, not all the time. Yes.
And as you stated, there was a time where Christian had pulled it and you took him to the hospital because the stoma had closed.
I'm not sure how it came out. I found it on the floor.
And he came back home. He wasn't admitted into the hospital, correct?
No, because they had to reinsert it back in him.
I'm saying after it was reinserted,
Yes.
he came back home.
Yes.
All right. And you were assigned to Christian in April of 2002. Is
Yes.
that right? And you worked an 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift?
Correct.
And your last day was September 16th of 2002.
To the best of my knowledge.
And during that time working in that household, you never reported anything to Division of Family Services,
I
correct?
reported it to my agency who I work for.
You never reported it to Division of Family Services, is my question.
No.
And you never met Theta when you worked with Christian.
No.
Okay. And there was a time when Dawan didn't want you going downstairs of the house.
Correct.
Okay. And you understood that to be his bedroom, is that right?
Correct.
And at no point Dawan ever threatened you, correct?
Not verbally.
He never verbally
Not
or physically
verbally.
threatened you. And you never called the police, correct?
I just quit.
You never called the police, correct?
No.
And you did not work in that household on the weekends.
Correct.
Okay. So you were not present to see what was given to Christian on the weekends or what was not given, correct?
That's correct.
And you spoke with Ron Goldstein from the prosecutor's office in regards to this case, correct?
Correct.
And when speaking with him, he showed you your FBI report with Liza Ludovico before you interviewed with him.
He did.
And you remember the deposition that you and I did?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And prior to that, you had talked to prosecutors at least 3 times before the deposition.
Yes.
Okay.
3 different people.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hi, Ms. Overby.
Hi.
Defense counsel just got up here and asked you about being a mandated reporter and about reporting these instances. Did you remember her asking you about that?
Yes.
And you indicated that you did tell your agency, correct?
Correct.
She also made a point to talk about the defendant never verbally threatened you.
Correct.
Were you afraid of the defendant?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury why?
Just due to the fact it's being intimidated by looks, having conversations where I couldn't receive anything to try to assist him with buying a belt or food. I just was always told no. So what I did was I stepped back from that situation, and due to the fact I have 2 sons of my own, I did not want to provoke him or him try to find my children because they went to the same school that was in the neighborhood where he lived.
Was there anything about his occupation that caused you concern?
Yes, he's a bounty hunter. Yes.
And did he ever raise his voice or intimidate you?
Objection relevant, Judge.
This door has been opened
Hold
by
on a
the
second.
defendant.
No, it's not irrelevant, so it's overruled. You may ask the question. You might want to restate it.
Did he ever raise his voice at you or intimidate you?
No.
When asked about the instances that you observed with Christian, Ms. Steele asked, how you never reported it to DFS. But did you find it concerning enough that you did feel compelled to notify your agency?
Yes.
And in your mind, was that you reporting it?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Any recross?
No.
Thank you. Witness may be released. Ms. Schlesinger?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, ma'am, you may step down. Thank you.
The second witness of the day is done testifying. We're going to take a break. We'll hit the pause button. You'll come back for the next witness. Twitter or use any social media and let us know what you think of this case so far and whether or not the state will prove murder against the father.
Today's limited time offer.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott with you this Monday afternoon. Let's get you back into court in Missouri. The third witness on the stand is now Kimberly Nelson. She's another nurse who cared for the victim before his sudden disappearance 19 years ago.
proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
I'm Kimberly Nelson
And how are you employed?
now.
Yes.
In Baltimore, Maryland as a substance abuse nurse.
And are you a registered nurse then?
I'm an LPN.
An LPN?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
A licensed practical nurse.
How long have you been an LPN?
I've been an LPN since 1990.
At some point, were you employed as an LPN and worked as an at-home nurse with the Ferguson family?
Yes.
And who was your patient?
Christian Ferguson.
To the best of your memory, did Christian Ferguson suffer from any sort of disease or illness that you were aware of?
Yes.
Can you please describe it briefly to the jury?
He had citrullinemia, which is like a protein deficiency. Well, he couldn't metabolize proteins, and that would consequently make his ammonia build up in his system, and it could cause him to have brain damage, a coma, or lead to death.
Okay. And then because of this illness, were you provided information with regards to dietary restrictions for Christian?
Yes,
And did Christian also receive certain medications?
he did, yes.
Now, as an at-home nurse, is it typically the responsibility of the parent or the nurse to order and refill those prescriptions?
Typically the parent.
In the case of Christian Ferguson, was Dawan Ferguson ordering those prescriptions or did you have to do it?
I ordered the medications.
I want to direct your attention specifically to March of 2003, February leading into March of 2003. Did you attempt to refill Christian's prescriptions during that time period?
Yes,
And were you told anything by the pharmacist or the hospital with regard to that prescription refill order?
yes. The pharmacist told me that, well, the pharmacist would not fill the prescription. I needed the doctor's renewal for the medication. So I called the doctor's office to get a refill, but they told me they would not refill it until they saw Christian
Did they state why?
because he hadn't been seen in over a year.
Ma'am, could you pull that microphone a little closer? I have trouble hearing you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
So they indicated to you that he had not been seen in over a year.
Objection leading.
I think Eve should overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had a hard time hearing you, so I just want to say they told you that he had not been seen in over a year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. What did you do upon learning this information?
I made an appointment with him for the doctor and advised Dawan that he had an appointment so I could refill his medication.
And did Dawan Ferguson take Christian to that doctor's appointment?
He did not, no.
Who did?
I did.
Did you go and take Christian then to the doctor?
Yes.
Okay. And if you know, were the prescriptions then allowed to be resuming?
Yes.
Okay. Did your care of Christian end in March of 2003?
Yes.
Why?
Well, Maxim called me and told me that his services were...
Objection, hearsay.
Okay.
Hold on a second. I'm really having trouble hearing.
I'm sorry. Maxim Healthcare.
Okay. I'll sustain the objection. Why don't you re-ask the question in a way to avoid direct statements from third parties, please?
Did the funding for your services end?
Yes.
You were there as part of a Medicaid program?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right. And so the last time, so it's your understanding that you worked for Maxim Healthcare, correct?
Yes.
And they kind of contracted you to go to the home?
Yes.
And in March of 2003, that contract with Maxim ended?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Hello.
Hi.
Now, Christian was the first patient that you had with citrullinemia, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And because of that, Maxim went over with you the type of care that Christian needed under your services?
Yes.
And that included the amount of feedings, bathing, medications, and using of the G-tube, right?
Yes.
And when you would pick him up in the morning, you would give him a bath?
Yes.
And Christian, you felt was a happy child.
Yes, I did.
And he could eat solid food.
He could, yes.
And he would eat food by mouth, but also took nutrition and meds through the G-tube.
Yes.
And while you were the home health care nurse, you had no hospitalizations within your care, correct?
None.
And no seizures within your care?
No.
And as you stated on direct, your duties with Christian ended March of 2003?
Yes.
And that information was conveyed to Dawan, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he wasn't happy it was ending.
Your Honor, objection as to what the defendant said or thought.
I'll sustain the objection.
And with it ending, he was attempting to go through another home health
Objection.
program.
Again, Your Honor.
Hold on a second. Yeah. Go ahead. State your objection.
Any of it would be self-serving hearsay by the defendant or actions taken by him.
I agree. That is sustained.
You are aware that he was trying to go through a different program.
Objection, Your
Hold on a
Honor.
second. It's the same question, and it again is sustained.
He asked if he would stay
Your
on-
Honor, objection.
I didn't even finish the
She's talking about
Please
statements
approach.
by the defendant. That's not allowed.
Boy, that is a sidebar because really those attorneys both sounded aggravated. Here with me to discuss this, criminal defense attorneys Josh Shiver, Jack Rice. All right, they finally got heated about it and the judge is calling them up to the bench. But let's talk about the emotional impact that these witnesses likely have on this jury as they describe, quite frankly, neglect and potential abuse of the child. Josh.
Jack was absolutely nailing it. And while we're sitting here watching this, listening to that nurse talk completely independent. She doesn't have a role in this other than to just say what happened, describe things that to anybody that's raised a child make their hearts split. I'm sorry. You can't talk about having a baby be living in their own filth without it just ripping you apart. That's the conviction. And Jack turns around, tells you and me right there, that's the one that does it, and I agree. The initial testimony of the mom, not that strong. Those nurses, that was the case.
All right, Jack, one other really quick question, but that is, how do you separate the two charges? What problem does this present when we know he's being charged with murder in the first degree, but also abuse of a child resulting in a death?
I think in a case like this, what I'm really looking at is I'm looking at this ringer, as I was calling her. That was the nurse, the one who came back and talked about the brutality of what happened to this child. The problem is they may not have direct evidence of the murder itself. They may not need it. And the reason they may not need it is because they're going to hate him so much for what this man may have put this child through, and I think that nurse put it there. But the problem that I still see is that they never bothered to charge this out. How many years ago? Was it 15 years ago, 16 years ago? You do nothing for 15, 16 years and you say, oh, it's a problem now? I mean, that brings up the broader question of what's going on, not just in this case, but sort of generally. And I think that's something the prosecutor can use, and they will.
Because you're right, he wasn't arrested for years.
Nothing. Why not?
Later.
Nothing.
We don't know. All right, I understand the sidebar is over. Let's get you back into the courtroom.
So at the March 2003 doctor visit that you took Christian to, while there with Christian, they did some blood work, reconfigured his oral diet and formulas, correct?
Yes.
And he was not admitted into the hospital at this visit.
No.
And while you were there, well, let me backtrack. When working with Maxim, you get a plan of care order for the patient, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And while you were there at this visit, there was an issue with the plan of care orders that you were working off of, taking care of Christian. Is that correct?
I don't recall that.
Okay. So do you remember back in August of 2003, speaking with Special Agent Liza Ludovico?
Yes. Is August? Yes. Yes.
August of 2003.
Yes.
Okay. And you spoke with her in regards to your care of Christian Ferguson and observations you had seen in the house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would looking at this interview help refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you.
Jamia, what page are you referring to?
One moment. It's a long report. Page 10.
Thank you.
I'm going to have you read this last paragraph down here. Just read it to yourself and let me know when you're done.
Yes.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes. A little bit.
Okay. So the plan of care orders that you were operating on Maxim were corrected after that visit, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And you are a mandated reporter, is that correct?
Yes.
And that means you're legally required to report any abuse or neglect if you see it or
Yes.
suspect it?
Yes.
Okay. And you never hotlined Dawan or called the police?
No.
And you never saw any bruises or unusual markings on Christian's body?
No.
And the interactions that you would see between Christian and Dawan were loving and caring?
Yes.
And he would encourage you to take Christian out of the house?
Objection, Your Honor. All of this going to the things about the defendant.
Yeah, that is sustained.
Dawan never made you feel uncomfortable?
No.
Okay. And you never witnessed any arguments between Dawan and Monica?
No.
And Dawan never complained to you about Monica or Theta?
No.
Now, the nurse that was taking care of Christian before you came back from leave, that was Tradell Day?
I don't know. I don't really remember her name. If it's in that statement, then
Would this
yes.
refresh your
if it's-
recollection? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't.
It's page 1. Just read that 4th paragraph now.
Your Honor, may we approach?
You may.
Thank you.
Oh, sidebar.
Yep, sidebar. There is a sidebar. So we're going to take the opportunity to take a break. I've got 2 great guests that just said a sidebar, and right after they said it, that's what happened. We're going to squeeze in a quick break. When we come back, we'll take you back to court here on Court TV Live.